You are experiencing the Knuckleheads of Liberty podcast.
It is December 20th, 2024, and welcome to the Knuckleheads of Liberty, where we are bringing you the people and the organizations fighting for liberty around the country and in your region. And today we have a special show. It's sort of our end of the year show. And so we have a special guest with us today, Susan Shelley. She is a writer for the Southern California News Group, which includes the Orange County Register, the Los Angeles Daily News, and also to the oh gosh, I can't remember which is the other newspaper, Susan, in that group.
In that group, the Riverside Press Enterprise.
Riverside. Okay.
9 papers in all. 11
awesome.
papers in all. 11
yes,
papers.
and she's also a writer for the New York Post as well, and she is the vice president of the vice president of communications of the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association. So she has a absolutely full plate, and so we're so happy that she took the time to be with us here today, because what we're going to talk about is some of the crazy new laws we've got to deal with coming into 2025 here in California. So this is, every year, I guess we get a bag of goodies left over from the from our lawmakers, and we've got to deal with it coming into the next year. So we're going to talk about some of that throughout the show. But before we do that, let me introduce you to the rest of the panel. In our upper left-hand corner, we have Leon, the word Brathwaite, last word in Liberty. He is a retired engineer in the state of California. And in our upper right-hand corner, we have Susan Shelley, and my name's Jason McPhee, and I'll be your host today. So we always start out with a Liberty quote of the day, and I think this is sort of an apt quote because it kind of gives people a sense of what this government is all about that keeps leaving us all these goodies. And it's from Bastiat, Frédéric Bastiat, who was an assemblyman in the French assemblyman in 1800s France, an economist and an author, and has just a whole bunch of wise things to say. But this particular quote I thought was a pretty good one. It said, "In the minds of the people, law and justice are one and the same thing. This belief is so widespread that many persons have erroneously held that things are just because law makes them so. Thus, in order to make plunder appear just and sacred to many consciences, it is only necessary for the law to decree and sanction it." And I feel like that's so many things going on nowadays where the law just says that this is the way we're supposed to do things, and it seems like that's how we got into an upside down world. What do you guys think about this? I think this explains all kinds of craziness that we're going through. Maybe some of the, DEI stuff, some of the other things that just seem like we've turned justice on its head. What do you guys think?
Yes, justice and taxation. If the government says that you have to pay a certain amount of money and other people can get a big check, people think that's the moral and correct way to do it because that's the law. And they don't really think about who earned the money and whether they have a right to it also, maybe a better right to it.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah.
I mean, this really is that quote from Bastiat should be time stamped upon everybody's mind and in everybody's consciousness. Because, really and truly, when you look at what's going on right now in our society, in present day America, look at today what's going on. I mean, so many things have been turned upside down in terms of what is right and what is wrong. I mean, on January 6th, a bunch of people invaded the Capitol, all right? They have been prosecuted horrendously, quite frankly, and I hope Trump pardoned most of them. But look at what happened in the summer of 2020. Who was prosecuted for that? Okay, everybody was talking about go, we're going to fight for justice, right? Social justice. We were fighting for social justice. Look at what they were fighting for. But they were burning down our cities. And right here in Portland, right north of us here, there was a federal building. There were people in the building. They were trying to burn it down. But nobody was prosecuted for that. So what is happening here, we have reached at the point where we have select a tolerance of violence, depending on who it is. If it's social justice, that is good, quote unquote. And we have these selective prosecutions, which is turning the law upside down. I mean, I'm not here to defend Donald Trump. I don't want to do that. We could spend a whole show on that if you wish. But look at all these persecutions of Donald Trump that went on. 91 indictments that came within 6 months of each other? What was going on that? This was a government the Biden administration in particular, trying to persecute its political opponent. So the laws of this land have been twisted and turned upside down, and we're in a very scary place if we don't do something about this and do something about it soon.
Well, Leon, you got a lot out of that quote. But I definitely take the point of the socialism issue and the taxation issue that Susan got out of that as well. I just, this is what a lot of people use to say, well, it must be okay for me to take from my neighbor if,
Yes.
if the law says so. So, yeah, great points all around. So, well, let's get into the main topic, I guess, here. And this is all of these laws that the legislature has given us to consider here this year. So, Leon, maybe you could bring up the article real quick here. There's this one is from Fox, and we're going to kind of go through the list of these here. But there, I guess I'll put it in the viewer's mind. Just think about it. How many would you guess that we have to think about? And these are just state laws, not necessarily other ordinances or maybe changes in federal law or anything else. But how many would you guess? Would either of you guys just care to take a guess? I know you guys kind of seen the list, so you have an educated guess on this. But
it always seems like too many. However many it is, it's too many. There are just too many laws in California. You can't move in this state. You can't do anything in this state without checking with the government at 3 different levels, and it's very frustrating.
Yes, and it all
and not
is
only
to our
that.
detriment.
Yeah, not only that. And Susan is absolutely correct. However many it is, Jason, it might be 50, it might be 100. And that doesn't even include the amount of regulations that come with these laws.
Yeah.
The other thing too that is so important is that all of these laws are going to have a date of effect. None of those laws, none of them, as far as I know, will have a date of expiration or sunset date.
Right.
So the laws will just go on and they're almost there eternally. Every year we get these tons and tons of laws passed by our federal government and in our case, in our state government here in California. And how many laws do go off the books? We always expanding the books. We always expanding things for us to be persecuted for. But what happened to, do they take, and there's some time when you should take laws off the books? Seriously, they don't do that. And this is a real problem.
I've seen them put tax increases on the ballot with a sunset date, but they always come back and take the sunset date off. Just like 2-3 years before it's going to expire, there's always something else on the ballot to say, well, this is not a tax increase. And it's not a tax increase because it's preventing a tax from going down. So it's pretty frustrating.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It's
yes.
Yeah, it seems like never ending. And by the way, if you haven't guessed yet, the answer is 38. That's what I counted. And I might be wrong. Maybe I missed 1 or 2 here, but 38, that's just these. And like Leon was saying, there's regulations and there's all these others. So if you don't know these things, then guess what? If you have no idea when you're violating the law, which means that you're always potentially walking this tightrope that you could find yourself on the wrong side at any moment. And that's a terrible place for a society to be. But let's get into this. And by the way, I wanted to focus on who the champion is who brought us all these laws or cheerleads them all anyways along the way. And that is our Governor Newsom. So I have a little bit of a video here to show, I guess, what all these laws are going to do for us for the next year, because I feel like they take a lot of the joy and happiness out of most of our homes. So let's show this little clip, I guess, of kind of, I think, what's going on in the governor's mind. So, Leon, that's KOL number 1.
Fireplace flue where the little Who stockings hung all in a row.
These stockings, the Grinch, are the first things to go.
Then he slithered and slunk with a smile most unpleasant around the whole room, and he took every present pop guns, pampoonas, pantufas and drums, checkerboards, bisselbinks, popcorn and plums. And he stuffed them in bags. Then the Grinch very nimbly stuffed all the bags one by one up the chimney.
And that's just a preview of what's to come in 2025. I think. So, anyways, hopefully our audience enjoyed that. I know we won't enjoy the actual laws very much for them. But anyway, so here we go. So we're going to kind of walk through most of these, but we won't get into all of them. But we'll at least tell you about them because it's just amazing how many there are. But the first one that we'll touch on is an area of I guess, artificial intelligence and Hollywood. And so there's some interesting aspects to these, but there is an AB 2602, and it makes it illegal to use artificial intelligence to replicate an actor's voice or likeness without permission. And so I'm sure there's, a little bit of, detail and nuance that goes into that. But, what do you guys think about that? I mean, this is kind of a issue. We've seen movies like Star Wars where, they kind of brought back Princess Leia and other things like that, where people, that have long since passed away, they've been able to kind of bring them back into our imaginations. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? What do you guys think about that?
Well, I think these are good things. There are two laws here. There's AB 2602, which has to do with having something in the contract so that a performer has legal representation or union representation to understand that they're signing away their right to be digitally duplicated. How much of an option there really is. It's always take it or leave it when you want to work in show business. So I'm not sure it really helps that much, but it's something. And then the other one, AB 1836, no voice or likeness duplicated electronically without the consent of the performer's estate. This applies to deceased actors. And I thought this was especially interesting because James Dean, who had been dead for 64 years, appeared in a movie in 2019. And George Carlin was re-engineered with AI into a special called I'm Glad I'm Dead, and his family sued over that. It's like, how dare they? How dare they take his performance, his intellectual property, his likeness, his voice, and monetize it without the permission of the family? So I think the law's a good idea.
Yeah.
Well, I know, Jason, I think you and I will have a disagree on this law. Okay, I think so, but I'm not sure. We'll find out. But I think I'm going to agree with Susan that this law is a good law because I believe this is intellectual property, and that intellectual property is just as valuable as real property, as like real estate. Like I have a home here, and if God forbid I pass away, or when I do, I want to be able to leave that so that my children and my grandchildren can enjoy it. Okay? Pass it on to the next generation, and they can pass it on as long as they want to. The point is, I think people own their real property and they own their intellectual property, whether they're here or not. Okay? I mean, after they're gone, of course, our representations or the executive of our estate will take care of who will actually physically own the property or the intellectual property or the real property. But I think this law is a good law, and I think it's something that should be enforced, quite frankly.
Well, I certainly like the idea of making sure people are aware when they sign a contract what they're signing. So I'm cool with that part of it. I do get a little bit nervous about the issues of intellectual property because they are a little bit different than physical property in the sense that, the physical property like your home, there's a scarcity there. Not everybody can own your home. At the same time, but an idea a lot of times, even Jefferson said, it doesn't dim my taper if somebody lights their taper off of mine, I think was a paraphrase of a quote of his. But in this particular case, it does make me wonder because obviously, somebody's reputation, what you do with that and all that, it can obviously have ill effects on people. But if you also think about it, we do this with so many of our historical figures. And what makes somebody a historical figure other than the fact that they're kind of dead? That's right. And I mean, we do this with George Washington, Abraham. Well, there was a movie about Abraham Lincoln where he was a vampire hunter. I don't think anybody asked his estate if they could show him as a vampire hunter. I don't know. I mean, to me, I can see the idea that, you know, we hate to trash people or do things that maybe, you know, degrade their memory. But on the other hand, I do think we need the freedom, maybe once they passed, at least maybe to be able to start making new stuff. And AI really challenges this because it's not just somebody putting on makeup and looking sort of like them. It can be almost a digital copy of the person. So, yeah, it's brave new world.
I think the difference is it's based on their real voice and their real likeness. It's a digital manipulation of their own performances. It's not someone else's performance of their material. It's not a cover. It's actually looking like it's Elvis Presley performing, and they're selling tickets to it. And that's I think it's a different kind of thing.
You're right, and you're monetizing this person. You're going to make money off of this digital copy, and the family or the man's estate or woman's estate cannot gain anything from the fact that you are monetizing. Well, if it's supposed it was my wife, you're gonna be monetizing a digital copy of my wife, and I should gain nothing from that. There's something wrong with that. And the other thing, Jason, the concept of scarcity. You said that, okay, like for instance, my home there's some issue of scarcity here, but people can buy substitutes, so near perfect substitutes of my home, and could have just the enjoyment that they wish to have.
Leon, the issue is the scarcity in the sense that it is an actual group of atoms that everybody can't have at the same time, right? I mean, they have to go get a different group of atoms that they can make look like yours or whatever. The idea
substitute,
is
Jason.
literally,
no.
Well, no. The issue is, well, Leon, I guess the way I'd say it is, if one person say sings the song Happy Birthday, then the guy across the street sings the song Happy Birthday, does that degrade at all your ability to sing Happy Birthday? And then if everybody in the world starts singing Happy Birthday, even though one guy may have created that song, everybody singing it at the same time doesn't degrade anybody's ability to. That's what I mean. Whereas, you know, everybody can't have your house or your pair of shoes or your jacket. So the idea can be, you know, is infinite essentially, whereas the physical good is scarce. So, you know, at some point you run up into the issue that everybody cannot own that same jacket or that same baseball card or that same, you know, painting or whatever it is at the same time. So, but that's the clarification of it. But yeah, so there we are.
I don't accept that clarification, but we could probably go around in circles all night.
Okay, well,
if you think about you know, commercial endorsements and that kind of thing, if you think about let's find our favorite movie star, let's make John Wayne endorse our canned goods, let's make him endorse canned peaches. I mean, do they have the right to do that? Yes. Just because he's dead, they can manipulate his voice and his image from old movies, and they can make a commercial. Can they do that? I don't think so. So,
but suppose an actor just dressed up like John Wayne and then said, I'm selling this brand of cigarettes or whatever it is, or canned goods. That's exactly what we do with people like George Washington. You know, we'll have somebody dress up like George Washington and sell insurance. Or
you know, I think there is a 70 years after their death distinction. In one of these laws, there is a distinction about people who are historical. But as far as using their voice and their likeness and using AI to reanimate them, I think that's just a bridge too far, in my opinion. That's really stealing the performance of an actor.
Yes,
well, it's certainly a good deep issue, and it's actually a fun issue to poke and prod. So, but well, let's poke and prod the next one. So the next area is autos and cars. So it says beginning in January 1st, AB 413 makes it illegal to park a vehicle within 20 feet of any unmarked or marked crosswalks or 15 feet of any crosswalk where a curb extension is present. I don't know. It doesn't really knock my socks off. I'm cool with just going on to the next one. I don't know about you guys.
We should look at this in the context of all the laws they're passing to discourage driving. They're trying to make it more difficult to have parking spaces all over the place, from approvals of buildings where they don't have to have as much parking if they have bike spaces. And this is banning parking spaces within 20 or 25 feet of a crosswalk or an intersection. And I think they want those spaces for these electric scooters and things that they think are the last mile of mobility before you get to the rapid transit that you're supposedly going to use to get around California. Good luck with that. So I think it's a part of the larger war on cars.
Yeah, I think so too. And I totally agree with that. Man, we find a lot of agreement here. We should team up and go after Jason. I'm ready.
Well, I'm a knucklehead of liberty. Absolutely.
Well, I did notice that that rapid transit isn't all that rapid either.
No, it is.
And a lot of times when they say, gosh, what is it? Mass transit, I notice an awful lot of empty buses and trains as well.
It ain't rapid. It ain't rapid. It's sometimes empty and sometimes smell bad. So it's okay. I'll pass.
Well, we are coming up on a law here, though, under these car things that I did have a big issue with, and that one is SB 1100. And it says, makes it illegal for a job posting to require applicants to have a valid driver's license. And essentially what they're trying to say is, if the job doesn't require driving, you shouldn't be able to require somebody to have a driver's license. And to me, I just think this is crazy. I mean, if you want to form a relationship with somebody, a work relationship, it shouldn't matter what anybody else thinks. It should be what, if you want them to wear a blue shirt to your place, it shouldn't matter whether or not a blue shirt is really required to bake cookies or whatever. If you say, I want somebody with a blue shirt, then that could be part of the contract. So I don't understand why the government needs to get in here unless maybe they're worried that, you're going to eliminate people who maybe don't have identifications. Maybe that's the issue. I don't know.
If they don't have identification, I would question that. You living in America, where you could go down by the DMV and get a some kind of identification. Sometimes it's free or minimal cost. You can't even do that to come to my job where you're going to work. I don't know what kind of person you are. I need to know something about you. At least I could find out look at your driving record, or look at something. I got to know about you. And the point, and the larger point here is not even that, to be honest. The larger point is, why is the government involving itself in a relationship between an employer and an employee? For what purpose? I think we have a marketplace where people can make these decisions all by themselves. We are not children. If you don't want to go down to the DMV and get a driver's permit or get some kind of form of identification, that's your choice. But then you pay the consequences when you go to an employer. If the employer say, well, I want to see some sort of identification or something. Come on.
It's very strange. They can require a college degree for jobs that arguably don't really need a college degree to do the work, but they can do that. So here they're trying to make having a driver's license on the same discrimination spectrum as race and gender and national origin and other things that are illegal to discriminate over. But how does having a driver's license fall into that same category? I think this is a strange one.
Yeah, how many baristas out there, are running around with these sociology degrees and other
Exactly.
things like that? I mean, it seems like, I don't know. To me, it just seems like if you're a business and you want a barista with a sociology degree, great. It just seems crazy that the government would ever want to get involved. But certainly we have all of these different licenses and degrees, and just to say, hey, I'd like to see a driver's license. I don't know. Well, anyway, I think we've rolled that one to death. Let's see. So here's the next one. SB 905 eliminates the locked door loophole, which requires prosecutors to prove car doors were locked when a burglary took place. This gives prosecutors more flexibility to address auto burglaries and thefts. I actually think this is probably a good one. It sounds like before, it made it harder for a prosecutor to say you were trying to steal something if somebody left the door unlocked. I mean, it's your car. I know I'm not supposed to be just opening other people's cars up and going through them. I don't see why this should matter. If you're trespassing, then it's kind of theft. What do you guys think?
I don't know how you would ever prove that you locked your car or didn't lock your car after the fact. I'm not sure how you, sort of a way of saying we don't intend to prosecute anybody for car break-ins. So now they
Exactly.
now they will.
The fine print of that, yes.
Yeah. Well, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think this is part of the package of bills that Gavin Newsom pushed through the legislature just before Proposition 36 was on the ballot, because he didn't want Proposition 36 on the ballot, and he was trying to take the wind out of the sails by throwing together a package of what looked like tough on crime laws that didn't require any prison time for anybody. I think this is one of those.
So a few good things snuck through somehow by accident, I guess.
Yeah, by accident.
But why?
Yeah.
I don't know. Why is this law a good thing though? Well, what is the point? Why is it considered a good thing?
Well, it's a good thing because it lets prosecutors prosecute this particular crime of auto break-ins without the owner of the car having to prove that he locked it first. So it makes it easier to prosecute car break-ins.
Yeah, and keep in mind, in San Francisco, they were literally telling people, just leave your windows unrolled because they're going to break the windows anyway. So yeah, this is just absolutely nuts. But okay, well, let's go on to cannabis. Apparently AB 1775 is one that I guess cities and counties can allow existing cannabis retailers and consumption lounges to sell non-cannabis food and drinks. Local government must approve and license the business. It says under the current law, cannabis retailers with consumption areas may sell prepackaged food and beverages if authorized by the applicable local government. This bill expands the legislation to include freshly prepared food and drinks consistent with the California Retail Food and Code. I mean, I'm sorry, if it's a legal business, why on earth can't they sell food? I just don't even understand. I mean, why we would have all of these little paternalistic laws, of a nanny state telling us what we can and can't do. This just is nuts. What do you guys think about that? I think this is a good thing. It's expanding it, but why were we restricted in the first place?
In the first case, exactly.
No good reason. The drug is legal. The food should be legal. It makes no sense that the food should be a crime and the drug is legal. It makes no sense.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it goes back. It goes back to the whole point. The nanny state, just like you said, Jason, the nanny state, that the government thinks it has a right to insert itself into almost every aspect of our lives. So even they want to come down to this point of, like Shirley said, the drug is legal. This is marijuana and those such a things. That's legal, but the food is illegal in the same place. I mean, what kind of ridiculous thing is this? Just think about it.
That's crazy. But Leon, I've got to insert myself right now to say, if you're watching us on public access, you're going to have to catch the rest of the show online. So go check us out there where we have the rest of this conversation and many other fun stuff. And we've got a lot of other fun stuff to cover. So go check it out. Okay, back to the show. So I think we're ready to move on to the next one. And these look like consumer laws. So it looks like AB 2863. Companies offering auto renewal services must give customers the option to cancel the subscription by the same method they used to subscribe beginning in July 1st. I don't know. I mean, it seems okay. It doesn't really do anything to me, this law, but what do you guys think?
There are a lot of times that you will sign up for something that auto charges on your credit card. And then you think, I don't really want that anymore, but you can't find the place to cancel it. And by the time you find the place to cancel it, you have to call, and they put you on hold, and they make it really difficult. I think this is an effort to stop these auto charges that wind up being, a small amount for each person, but a lot in the aggregate. So it's a consumer protection. I think it's okay.
Okay. It sounds like they put the cancellation cheese at the end of a maze. Exactly. To make it easier to find your way through the maze.
Yeah. A lot of times the only way to cancel these auto subscriptions is to cancel the credit card and just let them go. And sign up for what you want again a second time.
Yeah, no, it does seem that
I
way
mean,
sometimes.
I could see it as some form of consumer protection, but I still think the problem here is that we have become too complacent, and we're expecting the government to protect us, and when they can't, and I mean, if this thing is such a problem out there, I think we as consumers and we as citizens of the United States should not be complacent, and we should more boldly seek to change things by either not giving that business our hard-earned dollars, or by withdrawing our subscriptions on our own until businesses learn to function in the marketplace at some level that is acceptable to us. So I'm not sure. I mean, I'm very skeptical of consumer protection laws that go beyond our rights as citizens and as consumers. I am always skeptical of these things, but the law is not a bad law, but I don't want us to fall into that sense of complacency that the government is going to save us and take us to some sort of consumer utopia.
Sounds
Well,
like you're
certainly won't
doing.
do that.
It sounds like you're doing our John Stossel, invocation for us. Why do we need all these consumer protection laws? Well, here's another one. AB 375 requires food service delivery services such as DoorDash and Uber Eats to provide customers with the first name and photo of their delivery driver effective March 1st, 2025. And I don't know, I mean, to me, it seems to kind of make sense, but I do feel like if this really makes sense, wouldn't companies just do this? I mean, because it doesn't sound like it's that onerous. Wouldn't they, if they really thought it was a security concern for customers, wouldn't they just do it on their own? What do you guys think about this one?
Well, I've used some of these services, and very often the person who comes to the door is not the person that was pictured on the screen when I ordered it. So it's either a spouse or it's a friend or someone's using someone else's account. I'm not sure, but as a I don't know, as a personal safety thing, I guess you should know who you're opening the door for, and maybe it's intended to prevent mischief of that type. I don't know that this is actually a problem. If you order something and you know what time it's coming and it comes at that time, that's what you ordered. So it's not that dangerous to open the door, but maybe there have been problems. I don't know.
I do kind of feel
I've never heard about. Go ahead, Jason. I'm sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, I do kind of feel like if a lot of customers were having a problem, you would think the businesses would respond, but it certainly doesn't seem like a terrible, idea for a law. But I do get nervous, like Leon, that some of these laws, you get too many of them, and pretty soon we don't know what's legal and what isn't.
And of course, sometimes the point of these laws is to enable lawsuits, class action lawsuits. So somebody makes a mistake with the picture and the name, or something happens once, and now you've got a company with deep pockets that can be sued on a class action basis because they didn't do what the law requires. And sometimes it's just that.
I have a feeling somebody's after a lot of free Domino's pizza.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm sure you guys use Uber, right? And when I call an Uber, it come to my home or wherever I am and stuff like that, I usually know the name, at least the name of the person. There's no law that, as far as I know, that force Uber to do that. So if there was some issue, and like Shelley said, I mean, if there was some issue, and I would assume the company would be responsive to that. I mean, because Uber some years ago had a problem with a few of their drivers actually committing crimes. In one case, it involved a murder, I think in Michigan or someplace like that. I think multiple murders, I think, in some places like in Michigan. And I think because of that, Uber has stepped up their security, and they have all kind of guardrails now, to make sure that you're safe and while you're using their service. So if there's some problem with DoorDash or one of these other people, I think they would respond. I mean, I don't want anybody harmed when they order food or when they order Uber or anything. I don't want that. But I think the marketplace will respond if there was a problem.
Well, this kind of makes me think almost along a similar line on this very next one. It has to deal with crime, and it's AB 3209. It says allows retail stores to get restraining orders against people sentenced for stealing, vandalizing, assaulting, or assaulting an employee at that store. And to me, I almost feel like, in a free marketplace, if we simply had freedom of association, this wouldn't be a problem anyways, because a store could just simply tell people, hey, we saw you before, get the heck out of our store. We don't want you in here. But it sounds like because we're not allowed to do that, now we need special permission from the government to say you can't come into my store with a restraining order. So I don't know. I mean, it seems like it's a good idea in the world we're currently living in, but it almost feels like if we just had freedom of association, we wouldn't need this. So what do you guys think about that?
I don't know how you enforce this. These are the same people who can't stop the shoplifting and can't stop the assaults on their employees. And who's going to enforce the restraining order? This makes no sense to me. This must be one of Gavin Newsom's package of retail bills to keep Prop 36 off the ballot. That sounds good. We're gonna help you. We're gonna let you get a restraining order. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I guess now we don't need to prosecute anybody.
By the time you get the restraining order, I'll bet they've robbed the store another 20 times. But go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. And this gets back to the very problem that we were talking about earlier, and I think you were talking about the government causes a problem,
right.
Okay, and then lo and behold, they are our savior. The reason why we are talking about restraining orders for people who come into our stores and rob the stores as long as it was below 950 and all that kind of stuff is because the government caused that problem. They caused that problem by passing, I think it was Proposition 47 or something like that. But now they're going to come and solve the problem for us. They're going to help us now. They're going to tell, oh, yes, we could get a restraining order and everything is going to be nice and wonderful. Again, they're going to take us to utopia. The same people who cause the problem. Okay, all right. That makes sense.
Yeah.
I just want to know when they're going to unlock the toothpaste. Tell me when we're there.
That's right.
That is so inconvenient.
Well, there is one easy way to unlock the toothpaste. Just move to a red state.
Well, I wouldn't call that easy, and I'm not leaving California. And
that's true. It is a little bit of trouble. But funny that a lot of these problems go away in places that aren't sort of big cities run by Democrats.
Yeah, true.
Very true. Coincidence.
Well, that takes us to the next one. There's Assembly Bill 1779 allows California district attorneys to coordinate with other DAs to consolidate charges for suspects in retail theft crimes that occur across multiple counties. And I guess I don't see a problem with that. I mean, it seems like, if they suspect that these people are doing this all over the place, why wouldn't you want to let law enforcement get together and try to consolidate their efforts to get these people? So that seems like a good one. Maybe that's part of that package you're talking about, where they were just trying to avoid taking away their what was it, Prop 47?
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I think so. Yeah, this is something the district attorneys wanted because they had trouble consolidating charges if they were going to try and prosecute organized retail theft or repeated retail theft. It was difficult to consolidate these crimes across different jurisdictions, and I think this was intended to close that loophole.
Yes, and I agree. I agree with that.
one of the few good ones on this one.
Yeah. I mean, going through that list, I didn't see very much to jump up about, quite frankly. I didn't.
Well, that seems like a good one. Anyways, Assembly Bill 1960 creates sentencing enhancements for taking, damaging, or destroying property while committing a felony if the property value exceeds $50,000. Well, again, it sounds like just another one of that bunch. It sounds like it just gives them another tool to go after somebody for doing a lot of damage. But
Right.
I don't see a problem with this one. I don't know about you guys.
No, I think it's fine. It's to address the broken windows and the smashed display cases and all the damage that's done to the stores in the course of committing these thefts, which weren't prosecuted as they could have been.
Yeah. And by the way, that's one thing I wanted to mention for people as well, that a lot of times people, they see a crime and maybe somebody steals $50 worth of stuff or something else like that. But a lot of times, a lot more damage is done in the transfer of that $50. I mean, just as a little analogy, when I was younger, I lived in Midtown here in Sacramento, and I had a truck parked outside of the home I lived in. And when I came outside one morning to go to work at I used to have a job in the middle of the night, so it was like 2:00 in the morning or something. I come out and there's a brick sitting in my passenger seat. The window is smashed open. They have tried to tear out the radio and just managed to destroy that area of the dashboard and not get the radio. And they ripped out the ashtray that I had some change in. And so I think they got about $2 in change and they did this huge amount of damage. So I think this is one thing people need to understand. There's a really high price to crime that can go well beyond just the amount that was transferred. So sorry, Leon, you go ahead. I just wanted to make that
I'm just wondering why this arbitrary $50,000? Why?
I don't think there's a reason. I think they just pulled a number. But it has, this has partially caused the insurance crisis in California, where a lot of businesses can't get their insurance renewed, or the premiums are skyrocketing. The lack of law enforcement on things like retail theft and vandalism raises your car insurance, raises your property casualty insurance, and it's not helping. So it's important to try and do something about it.
Now, I understand the need to do something about it. I totally agree with that. Okay. But I just wonder why they take this arbitrary number of 50,000. Why it couldn't be 25? Why it couldn't be 10,000? I don't see any need, or why it could be any damage at all.
Right. Well, Leon, maybe the other question on the flip side of that is, why is $950 the magic number on letting people run out of your store with free stuff?
Valid question. Valid question. Yeah. I totally agree. Valid question.
Yeah. I guess we'll never know the answer to these complicated questions that get answered in the halls of justice in Congress and every place else in our legislature. Well, let's see. Here's another one, and I actually think this one is also sort of makes sense. It says, under Senate Bill 1242, setting a fire within a merchant's premises while committing organized retail theft will be considered an aggregating factor and will increase sentences for those convicted. And I just wanted to remind everybody of what we went through not too long ago. The fiery but mostly peaceful program or protesting here. They didn't really think that was a problem. Okay, so I just wanted to remind people what our legislature thought. This was like kind of okay. This was peaceful. So
exactly, mostly peaceful. Mostly peaceful is what they said.
Yeah.
When Prop 36 was pending, it was the question was, how much funding will it have for advertising to pass it if it does get on the ballot? And so it's June, it's July, and they're at that deadline. And will Walmart, will Home Depot, will Target, will they put up a lot of money? So I think when you look at some of these laws, it's the question is, was this something that the big funders of Prop 36 wanted to have, and was the legislature and the governor trying to talk them out of funding Prop 36? Ultimately, it didn't matter. Prop 36 stayed on the ballot and passed with nearly 70% of the vote, which tells you it was people were concerned about crime and not feeling safe, and it was not a made-up thing.
Right.
We're seeing our stores exit. I mean, it was just a Safeway. In fact, my daughter had to do a little talk in her school thing about it recently, but a Safeway in the Fillmore district in San Francisco just closed its doors after being there 40 years. And it was because of crime. And they said it was because of crime. And, you just see now all these streets in San Francisco that just have closed up shops, and even banks and other places, just empty buildings because they can't seem to put a cap on protecting people's property rights. And it just so item after item.
I'm in Los Angeles, and DA George Gascon, ousted DA George Gascon, regularly told us that his only real concern was his failure to communicate that crime was not up. Yeah. And this is, I think this is a problem, that he didn't think it was a problem, and voters thought it was a problem.
You
It
know,
almost reminds me. Oh, sorry. Just go ahead, Leon.
those people on the left, people like George Gascon, they have an operating system, IOS, insanity on steroids.
Yes.
Susan, you could put that in your column one of these days and just credit me a little bit. That's all.
I'll steal it from you.
I couldn't help but thinking when you said he brought up a failure to communicate, I started thinking of Cool Hand Luke, but that was the exact opposite. All we have here is a failure to communicate.
That's what he thought he had. Failure to communicate.
Yeah. Well, and then another thing I guess they're trying to communicate with us here is Senate Bill 1414 raises the classification for soliciting and buying sex for minors under 16 from a misdemeanor to a felony. And that one actually was a little bit complicated. I think, let's see, here that one was. There was something about it in here that looked like, well, one, I guess I kind of wonder why soliciting sex from a minor isn't already a felony. That was kind of one thing I was wondering already. But the other thing was they did talk about the age issue, and I wasn't quite sure from the way I was reading it, but it did sound like it tried to make a distinction if somebody was under 18 versus over 18 who was, I guess, soliciting the sex. And I mean, I do feel like there could be a little confusion there, because I certainly hate to see somebody who's 17 and they're trying to have whatever high school antics go on between a 16 and a 17-year-old, and suddenly somebody is a sex offender. So I do get a little bit worried with some of the crazy overreaches that we kind of hear about. But yeah, as far as the idea that it wasn't already a felony to solicit somebody under 18, that kind of seems a little weird.
Leon, you were talking about the arbitrary figure of $50,000. Well, this is the arbitrary number of 16. If they're under 16, it's a felony. But why is it a misdemeanor to buy sex from a 16-year-old? There's no good reason. And it was pretty horrifying. The debate in Sacramento was pretty horrifying, as they talked about child trafficking as if it was something that was just part of the economy of California. And we don't want to have people charged with felonies, for participating in the economy of California. It was pretty horrifying, the attitude that they had about it. Shannon Grove she's a Republican, and she worked very hard on this, and she got Gavin Newsom to come around to signing this, but she could not get them to add the older kids to this protection, which is, I think, pretty horrifying.
It does beg the question if any of these people, these legislators, are on the list of people who visited Epstein Island. I mean, maybe our new attorney general will suss that out.
We sure would hope so.
Yeah. Well, let's see. So jumping back to the next thing. Let's see. So education. AB 1955 prohibits school districts in the state from enacting policies that would force educators to notify parents if students identify as transgender or request to use a different name. And so I thought this one, we've talked about this one a lot on the show before. And I did have a little video clip from the Goldwater Institute, because they actually were handling this one woman's case in Maine that was right along with what these this law is talking about. And so I think we'll play that little clip, because it really gets to the issue of what could be happening here. And so Leon, can you play KOL number 2?
Just always been able to come to me and talk to me about things. At the end of her 7th grade year, she began talking with a school social worker, but they did transfer her to this other social worker who I had never met, and he never reached out to me to tell me that he was going to be working with my kiddo. And everything about it felt like the goal was to remove me from any sort of conversation surrounding my daughter's mental health. One day, family affair, we were cleaning my daughter's bedroom, and we discovered a breast binder in her bedroom. And so I had a conversation with her and asked her where it came from. She finally came out and told me that the school had given it to her, and more precisely, the school social worker. It hurt as a mom to know that she was keeping a secret, but I think it hurt even more to know that adults were encouraging her to keep these secrets. It really makes you wonder what other things are occurring in your schools. It really makes you question everything.
And in this particular case was a mother named Amber Levine, and so she had this issue with her 13-year-old daughter. And I mean, the idea that the school is literally, trying to not just the idea that they might help the family with maybe a mental health issue that they're going through, but the idea that they would hide it from the mother is just it just seems outrageous. Anyways, what do you guys think about this? Because this law seems like exactly in this vein of trying to remove the parents from the process of parenting.
Well, this is the law that caused Elon Musk to say, I'm moving my companies out of California. He said, this is a bridge too far. And this goes all the way down to kindergarten or even pre-K. This is not just, 17 and 18-year-olds who are making an almost adult decision. This is little kids who are being, well, some people say groomed or coaxed or coached to think they're born in the wrong body. And to not tell the parents, I think, is horrendous.
Yes, I totally agree. I've said it here before, and I'll say it again. Gender dysphoria is real, but it is a psychological disorder. And these people in the schools have no business and no authority to be telling kids to hide things from their parents. And these teachers and these administrators who are coaching kids to keep this information from their parents, I hope they are prosecuted one day. Seriously, I really hope so. Because this is, and that is the correct word, Shelley, this is horrendous. It really is. It is horrible that our school districts, who are supposed to be teaching our kids reading, writing, and arithmetic, want to take our children, our young children, down this dark rabbit hole. Treat the problem. It is gender dysphoria. It's a psychological disorder, and it should be treated as such, not this damn nonsense that they are doing right now.
Yeah. Well, and imagine too, I mean, if your kid was identifying, say they identified as a space cowboy or George Washington or Adolf Hitler. I mean, either way, or God forbid, a Democrat. Either way, I think the parent would want to know, right? So I mean, to me, I just do feel like, I mean, if you look at a lot of these situations, say if a kid really is identifying that there's something that they're not, I think you would want to know as a parent, and we would, it's not necessarily to say that it's this terrible thing, but you certainly to cut the parent out of the process, just, anyways.
It's unbelievable. Yes.
Crazy. Yeah. Okay. Well, on to the next bit of madness. So that to me, that's the most abhorrent, I think, of all of the laws that we passed here. But now we have this one, AB 1821. California public schools will be required to teach the impact of the Mission Period and Gold Rush on California Native Americans. I mean, again, it's like, I have no problem if a school teaches this, but the idea that there's going to be a law that says they got to teach this, I mean, do you really know if this is, to me, I think you look at the failures that we have with kids in math. Maybe there should be a law that says math is priority one. I don't know. Instead of worried that they all know about the mission period. I don't think this is going to help anybody get that, dream job at the law firm or anything else they're looking for. So.
No, this is really a little bit, this is concerning because it's trying to undermine the American self-esteem, to say that America did good things. They're trying to undermine that and teach instead that America's a villain, and that the whole Western movement, the whole founding of California was a villainous enterprise for which we are all guilty and need to pay reparations. That's kind of where this goes.
Exactly.
So I kind of disagree with the mandate to teach this hostile curriculum.
It is so sad what's going on these days. Okay, so these kids, some of these kids, well, this isn't high school stuff, but some of these college kids, they go through 4 years, 5 years of college. They get these degrees in African American studies, Native American studies, Asian American studies, and all these damn nonsense, and they have no marketable skills. Their parents or whoever will load themselves up with all sorts of debt to get them through school, and then they can't repay the loans that the parents or they have to incur to get through school. And you know what's happening right now? The government now is trying to save us, right? Because they're gonna just forgive the loans, like if it's just gonna disappear into the skies. But you see, this is a problem. It starts here in grade school, where they're forcing teachers, they're forcing the school district to teach these sort of things. Oh, we have to teach about the Native Americans. Well, what about reading, writing, and arithmetic? What about that? What about teaching that? So to give the kids some sort of marketable skills. What about that?
But that might be dangerous, Leon. They might read something they're not supposed to.
That's true. No, that's true. Or they might figure out how to do a calculus problem, and then, oh my God, then the teacher becomes useless, I guess. I don't know what the hell it is. The kind of things that I see they're requiring to teach these days. I think there's some law that they have to teach things about LGBTQ. I think there's such a law. I don't know if there's such a law or some mandate or whatever. I don't know. But all these things that they're trying to teach, we never faced these kind of problems when I was being educated. And I was educated in a foreign country, okay? I was educated in Trinidad. And we didn't have that kind of stuff. All this nonsense they're talking, we have to have this DEI kind of crap before a child could learn, and all this other nonsense. They have to learn about their own history and their own background, and I have to have a black person to teach me, otherwise I can't learn. I wish I could have gone and tell my father that damn nonsense. I really wish I could have. Okay,
Leon, maybe the reason they're doing so bad in teaching us math is because they're worried we'd figure out this all doesn't add up. I don't know.
Right, you are.
But this is the thing. I mean, the humble thing is to say, hey, we just have school choice, and then we don't have to say what's right or wrong. Ultimately, that would work itself out in competition, and parents can figure out what makes sense for their kids to learn instead of just top-down nonsense like this, where kids can't add, but they can sure tell you about what a terrible country we're in.
But it goes back to the previous law that we were talking about. You want to teach them, you have to teach them about LGBTQ stuff. You got to teach them about Native American stuff. You got to teach them about African American stuff. You see, it goes back. It all comes back to the very same thing. And Shirley, you're absolutely right. The undermining of Western civilization and American values. That's all they're trying to do these days. Even the flag is becoming offensive nowadays. It's just these little bits and pieces of undermining what we know to be real. And, now they want to tell us, they fall into science, and the science is nonsense that Dr. Fauci gave us. And so on. There's the undermining of intellectual thought, of critical thinking, all of these things they're trying to undermine.
Yeah.
I don't like the law anyway, sorry.
Well, the next one is one that seems to make a little more sense, but I still don't quite think it adds up. And it's Assembly Bill 1780, and it said, we'll ban legacy admissions for colleges that accept state funding. And overall, I think that's probably, a good thing in the fact that why should a school that's accepting government money have special, I guess, relationships with some students rather than others. But the bigger issue to me is, why are so much of our government money going into these schools in the first place? If the government money's not going there, then who cares? If a private school wants to have a legacy admission or not, that's up to the school and what they think that means for their alumni and their, the quality that they're putting out. So I don't know, what do you guys think about that one?
I agree with you. These schools have huge endowments, but they don't want to touch that. They want public funding, and that's an issue, I think.
And I mean, I don't want us to escape the hypocrisy in this particular law. Yes, they want to ban legacy admissions. Okay, fine. Maybe some of the kids are getting there because of their father's name or because of their father made a big contribution or to the school or whatever and all these other things, these legacy admissions. But the hypocrisy in this is that are they also going to ban all this damn nonsense with this DEI stuff? Okay, if you want to talk about let it be merit, I'm fine with that. If you want to be merit, I'm good with that. But if you're going to ban these legacy admissions, fine, ban them. Also ban the DEI stuff that is doing nothing for anyone.
I want a football scholarship. I feel discriminated against.
Me too. But I think I wanted a basketball one. You know, I mean, you know, I'm 5'11", so I'm close. I'm close, and I probably could jump 2 inches rather than the 10 inches that they need. But I think I'm discriminated against because I can't jump high enough. Come on now.
Well, wait until Asians find out how discriminated they against they've been in all of these basketball scholarships. Then they'll have a real problem on their hands. So let's go to Senate Bill 639, and it requires healthcare professionals to provide care for people 65 and older to take continuing education in geriatric and dementia care. And I mean, to me, it seems like it might be a good idea, but do we need a law to tell healthcare professionals to do that? I kind of think that they can figure it out on their own. But what do you guys think?
I don't think you need a law for that. That seems ridiculous. It's one more thing for people to do in their jobs, one more bit of compliance that these hospital corporations have to do with all their healthcare workers, more paperwork, more reporting. If it's necessary, then the healthcare workers in the hospitals should be able to work that out without the government. And, you know, if it's not necessary, why are we doing it?
And it gets back to what we were talking about earlier. The government want to pass laws, and all these laws are doing is invading our space. They want to be involved in every aspect of our lives. And this is the problem with most of these laws you're seeing here. And look, we're going through all of these laws here, okay? And some of them, a few of them are probably good laws. Look at which one of these laws is even attempting to promote liberty, to promote our freedom. Which one of these laws that we have talked about here tonight? I didn't see one yet. But we have all these laws that invade our space.
I do feel like some of them might, in the sense that they're undoing other damage the government's already done to our property rights.
Okay, then I'll have to take back my statement as being so universal. I should say most then. Most. Okay.
Yeah. Well, let's go on to Assembly Bill 1825, also known as the Freedom to Read Act, prohibits public libraries from banning books due to race, nationality, religion, gender identity, sexual orientation, disability, socioeconomic status, or political affiliation of the book's subject, author, or intended audience. And to me, as I guess I can get that if it's going to be a government-funded library, but I do feel like maybe the problem is we have, why do all these libraries have to be government funded? I mean, so many people can just find most of the stuff on the internet now. It just seems to me that, the problem goes away if you minimize government in all these areas. What do you guys think?
I think this relates to children's books. It doesn't say so, but I think this controversy had to do with whether libraries had to stock particular kinds of books in the children's section that some parents considered to be inappropriate, age inappropriate, and sometimes pornographic.
Yeah,
right. It says high schools. So
So the state of California wants to jump in and say you must allow the libraries to carry pornographic books. Which one of the things about this in covering it in the news business is that these pictures in the books are too filthy to put in the newspaper.
Yes.
You can't say these descriptions on television or radio because you'll lose your license. So how do people know what it actually says? Banning books sounds bad, but if you actually read what's in the books, people have a very different reaction to it, but you can't report it because it's too filthy to put in the newspaper. So
exactly.
You know what's funny on that particular note? If I would have realized this was about the schools, but I didn't get it from that brief description, then there was this wonderful. In fact, there's been several of these examples where they've had these school board meetings, and
Yes.
a parent or a kid is coming up there, and they want to describe what the problem is, and then the school board says, "Sorry, you can't talk about that here." I'm just like,
Exactly.
you can't talk about
What's it doing in the
put it-
children's section of the public library? It's a concern.
Yeah.
You know, there's a very good video. I saw it online where a parent, right, went to a school board meeting, and he decided to read some of the text, the content of a book that is allowed in the school's library, and this is for little kids. And he started to read it, and the school board, the members of the school board started to, oh no, and the guy says, "Oh, is this something I said?" You know.
But you know what's great in this law? Here's an opportunity. It also says that the schools can't ban books based on political affiliation of author, subject, or audience. This is the opportunity to get libertarians in the public libraries.
There we
in the
go.
school libraries. Ayn Rand in every school library. Let's hear
There you
for
go.
it.
Yeah. And somehow I think that they won't apply that equally, kind of the way that
No, yes.
the way that the law doesn't apply equally to Trump. So,
Well, then we can sue. There you go.
yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. Sure. Yes.
We feel discriminated against.
Yeah.
There's no
There we
freedom
go.
in this library.
Yeah. Which is kind of funny because it's like, it's kind of what a library is supposed to be about, although these are school libraries. So, yeah. Oh, boy. Well, let's say employment. We're on to the exciting world of employment. So Senate Bill 988 increases protections for independent contractors by requiring workers be paid on or before the date specified in their contract, or no later than 30 days after completion of services if no date is specified. And it does almost seem like, it sort of seems like it makes sense, but then it's like, why isn't this in that contract? Right? I mean, that's all you'd have to do is put that in the contract, and you don't need a law. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, it sounds like another one that allows lawyers to file class action lawsuits against companies that don't pay their contractors on time. I thought California pretty much outlawed independent contractors, but there's still a few left, I guess. And if they're not paid, they can call a lawyer, and makes it easier to file a lawsuit, I guess. I don't know why else you'd have a law that does that.
Yeah, it just seems like they can literally put that language in the contract itself.
Yes.
Go ahead, Leon.
I used to be an independent contractor. I was an independent contractor for about 5 years at one time. Okay, I was teaching. And I don't need somebody to tell me what should or should not be in my contract. If there's some problem I have with me being paid, and that's between me and my employer. I don't know why the government had to insert itself here again. I don't know. I don't know what is the rationale here. Are we little children that we cannot take care of ourselves? Is that what they're implying in these laws? I mean, this is ridiculous, quite frankly. It is.
Yeah. I'm going to use
I don't see the point.
my mental intuition here, powers of intuition, to imagine that this is what's going to be in all of these employment laws coming up. But let's find out. Senate Bill 1105 allows agricultural workers to use paid sick days to prevent the effects of working outdoors in dangerous conditions such as smoke or extreme heat. And well, I don't know. I mean, to me, it seems like that's a good use of a paid sick day, but it does feel like, why isn't this just in a contract to begin with? I mean, why does the government need to be coming in there and telling each group of people how many paid sick days they have to have and all these other things? It just kind of seems like this is all stuff we can handle in private contracts. But what do you guys think?
I'm not sure what triggered this law, because it seems to me that if you have dangerous smoke or dangerous heat, that employers would tell people not to go out there anyway. So if that's not the case, that sounds like a bigger problem. I mean, that's almost assault to make people work in dangerous conditions. So that is that legal normally? That doesn't seem right. I'm confused by this one. I don't understand what they're doing.
Same thing here. I don't understand the point of the law. I don't know what it is they're trying to protect us from, because I don't think any wise employer who trying to have a decent business will have his employees going and working in dangerous conditions. I mean, I don't get that. I don't get that.
Right. And if people are going to use up all their sick time, if there's a week where they can't work because of wildfires and they use up their sick time and then somebody gets sick 2 months later, they don't get paid that. I don't know. This makes no sense, but I guess there must be something that caused people to want that law. So I don't know who they are or why they wanted it.
Yeah. Ultimately, though, it does feel like they should be able to work this out on their own. But let's go to AB 2123, allows employees to use paid family leave without having to use vacation hours first. Again, it just does seem like government is sort of inserting itself in an area that people should be able to work this stuff out voluntarily in a contract. But what do you guys think?
Same thing.
It sounds bad for small businesses.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, well, let's jump to the next one then. Assembly Bill 2499 expands the definition of paid sick leave. Here we go again. to include when an employee's family member is a victim of violence or the threat of violence, allowing employees to use sick time to help family members obtain a restraining order or to seek out services related to domestic violence or assault. I mean, it just seems like the legalese tied to paid sick leave is extraordinary. I don't understand why people can't work this out in a contract, but yeah.
I think all these bills were sponsored by the company that makes those posters that have to be up in the workplace, because every time they add one of these, everybody needs to buy new posters.
New posters.
So
The big
that would
poster
explain
lobby.
It is all of these laws are just trying to take us to that nice, wonderful socialist utopia that is in Gavin Newsom's head. You know what I'm saying? That's all this stuff. Yes.
I do feel like we've uncovered a new big lobby, big poster. Okay, well, under Assembly Bill 399, also known as the California Worker Freedom from Employment or Employer Discrimination Act, California employers can no longer discharge, discriminate, or retaliate against or threaten to carry out such actions because an employee refused to attend an employer-sponsored meeting related to religious matters, political matters, or matters relating to the decision to support or not support a labor union or organization. So I think we know where this one came from. But it is funny, though, because the way that's written, I seriously doubt if there is a DEI session going on in the company and you say, I'm not going to attend, that's going to be cool with the company. So, especially not the state, because the state does require this kind of stuff of their employees.
Of course.
And the federal government, which I guess might change with Trump coming in. But anyway, what do you guys think?
Well, public employees under a Supreme Court decision no longer have to belong to a union or pay fees to it. And the unions in California, they sponsored a bunch of legislation that gives unions access to everybody's phone number and email address and allows the unions to have mandatory meetings where it's explained to them that it would be best if they didn't stop being a member of the union. And this is sort of the opposite. This is if the company wants to have a meeting to explain why being a member of a union isn't necessary, why it's better if the company's non-union, that can't be made mandatory. So the pro-union meetings are mandatory and the anti-union meetings are not mandatory. And that doesn't seem like a level playing field, does it?
No, it's not. And you're talking about the Janus decision, yes, and you're absolutely right. But on a personal note, for 28 and a half years, I used to pay union dues. They didn't call it union dues; they used to call it fair share, your fair share, or some bullshit like that. Pardon my language. But for 28 and a half years, and then, well, of course, that changed with the Janus decision. But that was just about a year before I retired. But the point is, and it's just like Shirley said, they're giving access to the unions. Now they're trying to get around the decision is what they're trying to do. They're trying to get around the Janus decision. And they give access to the employee, or the employees have to go to these meetings and they have to listen to all the crap from the union about how they're so wonderful and they do all these great things for you and all this kind of damn nonsense and stuff, because they can't deal with the Janus decision. They cannot deal with it as it is written. So they want to do everything they can to change it, but they can't. But they could still. California is so pro-union, especially those public employee unions, which are so powerful here in the state. the governor and the legislature are doing everything they can to try to get around these things. So these laws here that they're putting in here is just another attempt to try to get around the Janus decision. That's all they're trying to do.
And just to be clear, too, from a libertarian position, I mean, libertarians, in case anybody's confused, are not against the concept of a labor union, which is essentially just a bunch of people coming together and exercising free speech as a group. The problem is they always want special rights under these things. And that's when the problems enter in, is once they start saying we need special protections or special rights that don't exist for anybody else, including the employers, then suddenly that's when it's not really about freedom anymore at that point. So, and especially if they're compelling everybody else to be part of their group. So,
well, let me just be clear, Jason. I have no problem with private employers having unions.
Private,
but public employee unions have a very big problem, a very big conflict of interest that we should never permit. Because what happens is these public employee unions will help elect these Democrats, mostly these Democrats, and then the same unions go in and negotiate with some of these same people who they help elect. So who's standing up for the taxpayers? Nobody is in those negotiations. There's a big conflict there. So I don't think we should permit public employee unions to exist. I really don't.
And even a hero of the left, FDR, agrees with you, because he actually did not want public employee unions either when he was president. So
you see how wise I am? You see how wise I am?
It started in California in the 1970s, and then you saw the cost of government go up and up, and the cost of education go up and up. And it was because of these public employee unions getting stronger and stronger and electing the people across the bargaining table from them, just as you said. And sometimes Proposition 13 gets the blame because that was 1978. But if you really want to look at the cost of government, take a look at when it became legal in California for public employees to go on strike and do collective bargaining. And there's an amazing coincidence there between the rise in the cost of government and the rise in the power of public employee unions.
And the crazy thing is, government already is a collective, and it's making these decisions. And if you don't want to work for government, then don't work for government. But why would you need an extra collective voice within the collective of government already? I don't understand. So,
what we need is a right to work initiative. We need something that liberates people in California from the obligation to belong to a union in the private sector as well as in the public sector. That would change the politics of California in a hurry.
Yes, totally.
Well,
I agree.
That topic totally triggered me to the point where I want to talk about firearms laws. And so let's go to Assembly Bill 2917, which in this one actually doesn't sound like a terrible idea. It says threats directed toward a group or location will be permissible in court when deciding whether to issue a restraining order to prohibit a person from purchasing or possessing a firearm or ammunition. Now, I'm not one for red flag laws and all those other things, I guess, but or at least I'm highly skeptical on these. But it does seem like if somebody is literally saying, I'm threatening to do violence to that group, and then they want to go buy a gun the next day, I guess I am a little bit concerned. I don't know. What do you guys think about this one? This one,
I think it depends on how it's implemented, because if it's implemented where they take a comment on Facebook, which is not really directed at anybody, and they interpret it as directed at a group, and then they come after that individual for essentially for speech, I think that's a problem. So it depends on how it's implemented.
Yeah. And this is the thing about some of these laws, and Shirley, you're so right, is the unintended consequences of these laws is what always concerns me. And even though the law on its face may look like, well, it's not too bad, right? It's not too bad, but it's the unintended consequences. Like you just raised this issue about these red flag laws. So, in many states, these red flag laws are so abused now. It's unbelievable. People get in the situation of like a divorce, and one spouse want to go after the other. They may use a red flag law to get the person in trouble. So all of these laws, even though on the face of them may look like they have some good, but it's the unintended consequences that really causes problems.
You guys have won me over on this one. I'm with you. Okay. Assembly Bill 574 mandates that the register or record of sale include an acknowledgement by the purchaser or transferee that they have, within the last 30 days, confirmed possession of every firearm that they own or possess. And I actually have the, gosh, I think this is the bill. No, I guess I don't have that one up. But the NRA did talk about that one, and I am a little worried about this one as well, because sounds like this allows them to create a gun registry, is what it sounds like. If you buy a gun, then not only do they know about that gun, but now they know about every single gun you have, and certainly allows them to criminalize you too. If maybe you even forget about one of them, then suddenly you're a criminal. And woof, boy, that's
yeah, this is terrible. It's none of their business. It's terrible.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the Second Amendment is embedded in our Constitution, and we should not need the government's permission to exercise one of our basic rights. And this is what these laws, all of these firearm laws and all these other things and stuff like that, is for us to have to seek permission from them, from it, I should say. Well, them, because it's various levels of government. For us to have to seek permission from them, for us to exercise a basic right that is in our federal Constitution.
Well, you know what's funny about this too is that this law only really catches you if you go in to buy something, but we just saw that, recent hero of the left shot a CEO on the street with a ghost gun, a gun that he created off of a machine. And yeah, and I mean, it was kind of funny because suddenly the left wasn't worried about gun laws at that point. It just absolutely, yeah. So in fact, they were too busy cheering to worry about gun laws.
Of course.
Yeah. So,
well, California is one of the few states that does not have a Second Amendment equivalent in its state constitution, which means if you want to challenge these laws, you have to go to federal court, right. And then you have to try to get them to the Supreme Court in order to get them thrown out, which has happened, but it doesn't seem to stick because California just keeps coming at the gun owners. And it's the lawful gun owners that are burdened by this stuff because criminals obviously aren't.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
It's funny too that I didn't hear much of the left also complaining about guns when they were pointing them at Donald Trump too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, some of them were celebrating and wondering, and probably was wondering why didn't were not better shots.
Yeah, it's like, why didn't you have one of the assault weapons?
Yes, exactly. God, sick.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's selective outrage. On to Assembly Bill 1483 eliminates an existing private party transaction exemption from the prohibition of more than one firearm purchase within a 30-day period. So it sounds like it's just another way to keep individuals from being able to make more transactions on guns. I'm against it as a libertarian. I don't know if there's anything good about this or not. What do you guys think?
I think no, it's another attempt to find every possible way that they can ban firearms without violating the Constitution. And of course they can't. So they just keep trying. And I think it's really unfortunate that California is disregarding the Supreme Court's decisions and the Constitution, the Second Amendment, sometimes the First Amendment. And it's just concerning that they don't seem to care. They make people go sue them and incur all the legal expenses when they should just stick to their oath of office and uphold the Constitution. It's not that difficult.
Yeah, there we go. Absolutely.
Well, you know that the next one, and this one just seems kind of like, one of these things that sounds responsible, but in the end is kind of ridiculous because we all just seem to throw away this paperwork. But Assembly Bill 1598 requires licensed firearm dealers to provide safety pamphlets to purchasers and transferees, as well as those being loaned a firearm. The pamphlet will have information on the risks of bringing and bringing a firearm into the home, including the increased risk of death to someone in the household by suicide, homicide, homicide or intentional injury. So they're not sure that you understand that a weapon might be dangerous. But it's still, I notice you get all of this material that comes whenever you get something from the pharmacist, or you rip the tags off of your mattress that tells you that you're not supposed to do that, or whatever the heck it is, right? All of this different paperwork the government forces us to do that nobody really reads or does much with. I don't know. What do you guys think about this? Sounds ridiculous to me.
It's ridiculous, and it should not have passed in California. It's ridiculous.
Yes, absolutely, total agreement.
Yeah, and I guess since there's
by the way, it's just making business for those pamphlet manufacturers, right?
Big poster and big pamphlet.
Poster strikes again.
One thing about the pamphlet too, they're requiring it to be a pamphlet. And to me, it does seem like, you could always just say, hey, go look at my website and I have some safety information there. That would not cost anything, but it doesn't sound like that's an option. Anyways, home ownership and housing. Senate Bill 450 requires local governments to drop certain zoning requirements to make it easier for homeowners to divide their homes into as many as 4 separate units. Also known as the Interim Housing Act, that's a different one. So SB 450 allows us to essentially use your property in, I guess, more ways than they currently allow you to use it. As a libertarian, that actually sounds pretty good. So I don't know what you guys think about it, but
I'm opposed to all of this. This is trying to make SB 9 work, Senate Bill 9 from a couple of years ago. Senate Bill 9 said that you could take any single family lot, any single family home, and you could split the lot, and you could have 4 units on that one lot where there was 1 unit, and you could have 2 homes and 2 ADUs in the back, and that was fine. And the cities had to approve it ministerially. They could not stop you from doing it. They could not charge you any development fees. They could not require parking spaces. And when you do something like that, it has an impact on everybody in the neighborhood because you're quadrupling the density of a lot, and it's going to require more water and gas and electrical infrastructure and eventually more schools and more police and more road repairs. It takes the parking that other people have been using, and it has an impact on the whole neighborhood. Shockingly, after this passed, not a lot of people did it. One of the reasons is probably because the property tax bill goes skyrocketing high because everything is new construction. So it's not that great a deal to split your lot 4 ways. In order to get over what the author of the bill thought were the obstacles to making SB 9 solve the housing crisis in California, this bill was passed, and this says that the cities cannot deny, they have to approve within 60 days. If they don't approve within 60 days, it automatically is approved. So it speeds up the process of doing this. And also it says that the local government cannot deny it because it has an adverse impact on the community. So they can deny it if I'm not even sure why they could deny it. They have to approve it ministerially. I guess if it's within the zoning of the neighborhood, if someone wants to put up a 6-story building, they can't do that. But they can do 4 units on one lot, and the cities have to allow it. I don't think this is a good solution. I think this is a way of taking away what other people have bought. Other people bought single-family homes that didn't have density because they didn't want to drive around the block looking for parking near their apartment. And then you take this. Also, it has a political impact because you have all these homeowners, and now you've got 4 units on the lot and maybe 3 renters and 1 homeowner. And when you put a parcel tax on the ballot, only the homeowner pays it. The renters don't pay it. A parcel tax is a property tax. So it has, and also the bonds that they do for infrastructure, same thing. It's a property tax. So you're changing the politics of these precincts in a way that I think some of these politicians really prefer, to elect more people who are progressive Democrats and fewer people who are property rights concerned Republicans. That seems to be the part of the underlying plan. So I'm against this kind of thing. I think when people buy property in a single family zone neighborhood, that should be respected and not changed out from under them.
Hmm. You know, Shelley, I didn't really understand. I mean, I read the summary of this law. I didn't really even understand the nuances of this law. So I really thank you for that summary. That sounds a very good summary of what's really going on. Seriously, thank you.
Yeah, no, it certainly brings a lot to it. But the one thing I would say is I kind of wish that these things were done more under private associations. Like if it's a homeowners association, you go in, there's a clear contract that everybody's aware of. You know, when it's government, it just feels like, I don't know, it feels like there's so much less control, I guess, you know, in the situation if it's government making the decisions. But certainly if it's a, you know, homeowners association, you know, some of these are kind of crazy with their rules. But on the other hand, there's no way they're going to let you subdivide in that
No, that's not true. These laws override. They override the HOA CC&Rs. They override them. The CC&Rs are unenforceable. If people want to put ADUs, if they want to take one house and make it 3 units, that is allowed regardless of what the CC&Rs say. Yes. And I just think it's wrong for the government to force that density into single family neighborhoods. I think it's wrong for many reasons.
But absent government, an HOA is not going to let you do anything that's not in their chart. They won't even let you put up a sign in your front yard unless they approve it.
True. And Susan, I don't know why I keep trying to call you Shelley. My apologies for that, okay?
Oh, that's okay. Everybody does that. I have too many first names. I have too many first names. I have one in the middle. I don't even use it because it would just make it worse. So, yeah. Don't worry about it.
Okay. Well, I'm sure Gavin Newsom is now on the job, and we'll have a law next year. Gives them something to do. Well, I guess going on to the next one, though, I guess there's this Interim Housing Act, and it's Senate Bill 1395, and it makes it easier for cities to build tiny homes for homeless residents. So this seems like this is maybe a similar thing, except maybe it's just an issue of being able to downsize to smaller limits. You know, to me, this is one of those areas that's kind of bothered me a little bit, because you do see that there are people out there. I remember seeing a case of some guy in Los Angeles who was running around and he was building these tiny little sheds for homeless people just to be able to go to sleep and lock themselves up in. And then the city that couldn't manage their homelessness problem was then telling him he had to take them all down. But the tent was fine. You know, if they're in a tent or if they're in a sleeping bag on the sidewalk, that's all okay. So I don't know. What do you guys think about this one?
Well, this is another CEQA exemption. You know, we have this really burdensome law that stops the building of everything, and then the government gives exceptions when they want to, and this is another exception to the Environmental Quality Act. The argument is that putting these tiny home villages for homeless people in residential neighborhoods is not a great thing for the people who live in the residential neighborhood for a lot of reasons. You're talking about people who may still be using hard drugs. You can't withhold the housing from people who are still doing heroin and meth and fentanyl. That's fine. That's called the Housing First policy. If it's government-funded housing, you cannot limit the people who come into it to people who are in a treatment program. You can't require a treatment program as a condition of the housing. So it creates, let's just call it issues in the community when you bring a homeless community into an existing residential community. So I think there's resistance to having tiny home villages put in different places. And this is an attempt to overcome that. The thing about the larger problem with all of these laws about this homeless issue and all that kind of stuff like that, all of these things are doing nothing but trying to treat the wrong problem. Okay? Yes, somebody is homeless, and yes, they need, nowadays they don't call them homeless, now they call them unhoused. Okay? I don't know what the hell that means, but that's what the new fancy term is. But the fact of the matter is, people are not homeless because they're unhoused. They are homeless because they have other problems, usually drugs, alcohol, and mental disease.
And if we want to help these people, truly help them, we have to treat those underlying problems before we try to put them in homes. Because Gavin Newsom already spent, how much he said, 20 billion or something. He's going to solve the problem in 10 years. And that was 25 years ago or something like that. This is what's going on and on and on. And we're still spending problem trying to treat the wrong problem. Spending money trying to treat the wrong problem. We have to stop this. All of this nonsense have to stop. Let's help these people if we really want to help them. But let's treat the correct problem.
Leon, he cares so much, he just needs another 20 billion.
Oh, no. Okay, there we go. Okay. For me, I didn't understand that. Sorry.
Well, let's see. Then they have this other one. It's called Assembly Bill 2347, gives tenants 10 business days to respond to eviction notices, up from 5. I don't know. I mean, to me, it feels like, my gosh, I guess landlords and homeowners have been kind of under the gun here in California. I thought it was taking months and years to get somebody out, and they want to add an extra 5 days. I don't know. To me, it just seems like this might be a solution in search of a problem. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Well, there's a constant tug of war between the tenants' rights activists and the property owners, the landlords, and over what the law will be. And this sounds like one of those compromise measures. You know, instead of more rent control, they did this. That's kind of what it sounds. It doesn't seem to solve the problem for anybody, really.
No, it doesn't. And you know, I am a rental property owner here in California, and I tell you, this 5 days, 30 days, whatever, that kind of stuff, usually from the time you set a notice for an eviction notice for a tenant until you actually get a tenant off your property is usually 2 or 3 months past. Seriously. So I don't know what this law is going to do, quite frankly.
Yeah.
You guys, we have gone quite long, but it does look like there's a light at the end of the tunnel. I guess we can try and burn our way through it if you guys are up for it.
Sure.
The lawmakers put the time into it, so I guess we should at least take the time to read it.
We should honor them by putting the time into it too, right? There's a way of saying yes. Okay, I got it.
Yeah,
okay.
I guess certainly most of the public won't, which is what they're counting on. So let's do it. So we have in the health area, Senate Bill 729 requires insurance companies to cover in vitro fertilization for. I guess access will also be expanded to LGBTQ plus families. So I don't know. I mean, to me, I don't know. It seems like the majority of our healthcare problems is that we're trying to specify too much, have too much government in what healthcare does. And I mean, to me, I think we should be insuring things the way we insure our house for catastrophe, not for paint jobs or, broken fence boards or whatever. It just seems to me that, if we really insured for catastrophe, then we could just get government out of most of this stuff and just say, hey, look, you got a $500,000 policy or something. And, I don't know. What do you guys think? This seems crazy to me, just one thing after another.
Well, every time they say the insurance must cover, that means the premiums go up. Somebody has to pay for this. So this is going to make insurance much more expensive. Is it necessary to do this? I don't know that it is. And is it necessary to expand it to LGBTQ couples who can't have children the natural way if they don't want to do that? This just seems like a tremendous expense to mandate, and it's going to result in higher insurance costs.
But you see, let's get back to the law of unintended consequences. So these people come about and they mandate, okay, you must cover this, you must cover that, you must cover the other. And then when the premiums go up, they come out and they say, oh my goodness, look at those greedy insurance companies. Oh my God, what are we going to do? We have to come up with a new solution to take care of these greedy insurance companies here in the great state of California. This is the horse shit that we have to live with all the time. Okay, they mandate, they cause problems, and then they want to be the savior to solve the problem. These people, I don't know. These people are insane. Insanity on steroids. That's what that is.
And as long as we leave them in charge of our education, most of the public won't figure this out.
Most people won't even know they did this. A lot of times with these laws, the laws pass, the costs come down a little later, and people have no idea what caused the cost increase. This is true with your electricity bill, with your water bill, with your insurance bill. It's the long fuse on the explosion of cost increases in California. And very often the people who did this to you are gone. They're on to their next job. They're on to their next office. And they're not accountable for what they've done. And we're stuck with these tremendously high cost of living problems in California, gasoline, everything, because of these laws that were passed going back maybe as far as 2003 or 2006. We're paying higher costs because of things that were put in the law. Everybody's gone, and you're stuck with the consequences.
Indeed.
I mean, that puts an exclamation point on all that we're going to be paying from this last administration just leaving office.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, let's do Assembly Bill 2515 bans the sale of tampons and other menstrual products that contain potentially toxic chemicals. Why isn't this just a consumer fraud law? I mean, if somebody sells something and it causes harm to somebody, why can't you just deal with it that way? Why do we need a special law for this? I don't understand. Well,
I don't understand why this is just in California. If something is toxic, why is it legal at all? And if it's not really toxic, why is California making it sound toxic? I don't understand.
Exactly.
Yeah, because I mean, as far as I'm aware, if somebody sells me something and it has toxic substances that they didn't disclose and it makes you sick, I think that you have recourse no matter what the product is, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, well. Anyways, another nonsensical law, but let's go on to AB 19.
Well, at least they're putting them in the boys' bathroom so that it's not sexually discriminatory. Everyone gets equally toxic. That's what's important. That we don't discriminate with toxicity in California.
We want the boys to be equally exposed in, what's it, Minnesota
and
or Wisconsin?
we almost had Tampon Tim as our vice president, so thank God. Okay.
Close call.
Well, Assembly Bill 1902 requires pharmacies to provide accessible prescription labels to people who are blind, have low vision, or are print disabled. I don't see a huge problem with this one. I mean, of all the things a libertarian could be upset about, this seems the least. But still, I do feel like that. Maybe it still is a market issue. But I'm not going to lose any sleep over it if this law gets through. What do you guys think about it?
It seems to me that a person who needs an accommodation can ask for an accommodation and someone could read it to them. I mean, there must be another way to do this without having a law requiring the pharmacies to provide this additional material. I'm not sure why the current system isn't working.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yes. Yes.
Maybe just another one of those problems or solutions in search of a problem. Maybe, I don't know.
They're printing something, so it's another big poster.
There we go.
Big pamphlet.
Yeah.
Big pamphlet, big poster, and big label.
Right.
Okay, and then we get to AB 2475 allows the state to increase the time it can hold people in mental hospitals for treatment from 5 days to 30 days after a judge determines they need to be released. And this sounds like part of that group of laws, Susan, that you were telling us about before that Newsom was trying to distract us with. I mean, it does seem reasonable, I guess, but I guess I do, get a little bit concerned about the state holding people for long periods of time. But, clearly, if you walk around San Francisco, there's an awful lot of people who are causing an awful lot of problems out there on the commons and the streets. So I don't know. I guess
this is a horrible issue because the mental health system in California is relying on community care rather than mental health hospitals. So I think sometimes people are held in hospitals that are not mental health hospitals. They're general hospitals, but they're held because they're a danger to themselves and others for, I guess it was 5 days. I think sometimes it's 72 hours, and I guess they want to make this 30 days. This is the real core of the problem is we don't have appropriate facilities. The biggest mental health hospital in the United States is the Los Angeles County Jail System, and that is appalling. And we should be building appropriate facilities to provide high quality care for people who need it and not leaving them on bus benches and then locking them up for 30 days and putting them back on bus benches. We have to do better in California. And one of the things that we could do is get a waiver from the exclusion in Medicaid for care in a large hospital. In the 1960s, large mental hospitals fell out of favor, and the idea was everyone would get a brand new prescription, these great new drugs, and no one would need a mental health hospital ever again. And that just didn't work out the way people hoped. So even though the funding is limited for care in a large mental health hospital because Medicaid won't reimburse for it, you can get a waiver from that. And California could be reimbursed for care in large hospitals if we built them. But this governor believes in the community care model, and there are never enough beds. And so people end up on the streets until they are arrested, and then they're in jail receiving appalling mental health services. This is not worthy of the state of California. This is really appalling, and it has to be fixed. And it's politics that's keeping it from being fixed.
Yeah, it does feel like maybe he could use some of that $20 billion that he misspent to apply to some of these problems. So that would seem to be the prescription. But the prescription would always just give him more.
Right.
Oh gosh, yeah. No. Well, I guess let's see. They have they're talking about Proposition 32. They were talking about how that had a minimum wage issue that was, I guess it would have increased minimum wage to $18 an hour for large and medium-sized employers and $17 for small employers with 25 or fewer employees. I guess that's would have happened, I guess, but and then it's saying the minimum wage will still increase based on the consumer price index. Beginning in 2025, the new state minimum wage will increase to $16.50 an hour. So I don't know. I mean, to me, it's just all nonsense. I mean, I'm a libertarian, and I don't think that there is such a thing as a minimum wage. It's simply you negotiate based on your skills, and if a product isn't worth that, then it probably I mean, in the end, it should only be getting built if everybody can come to a voluntary agreement. So I don't know. What do you guys think about this?
Well, California has made the cost of living really high, and then they come in, as you said earlier, Leon, and they're the savior, and they're going to raise the minimum wage to help people cope with the high cost of living. They caused the problem, and they're causing more problems because raising the minimum wage doesn't create the revenue to pay the minimum wage, so it creates fewer hours, fewer jobs, and it doesn't really work out very well. There have been several of these sort of industry council type laws where healthcare workers have a higher minimum wage, fast food workers have a higher minimum wage. That is not the path to prosperity, and that's just California going in the wrong direction, driving businesses out of the state.
Exactly. And then it get back to this arbitrary thing. Why 25 employees? What is this magic number?
Yeah.
Okay, what is the magic number? They always come up with these arbitrary things. Oh, the small, big, 25, or who's essential, who's not essential. Or they always come up with these arbitrary things. Okay, there's no need for a minimum wage. Okay, there's no need for it. The minimum wage should not exist. These laws, these minimum wage should not exist. The marketplace can easily handle these things with no problem. I'm sure it can. Okay. So even so, if the minimum wage was such a good thing, why is it only $17.50? Why is it not $200 an hour? Why not? If it's such a good, wonderful thing, we should make it as high as we can go.
Well, didn't we have a Senate candidate who proposed $50 an hour for minimum wage? Was it Barbara Lee?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's funny too, because usually what's happening is most of these economists who are selling this stuff, they try and stay around the margins, right? Because they realize that argument of Fed put it up to 50 or 100 blows out their argument. So they try and say, well, look, if we just increase it a little bit, there's no effect. But the problem is, the economy is noisy. There's all kinds of distortions happening out there. And so when you just make another little distortion, it's hard to think about each distortion as a raindrop making ripples, right? And if it's just one drop, you can kind of measure measure the ripples. But if you have drops coming from everywhere with all the different government distortions, it's hard to figure out what's causing what.
Yes.
And that's what they're counting on. But boy, you drop $50 or $100 an hour, and that's going to be like dropping a bucket in that puddle, right? And they realize that, and they know the jig's up, so they always stay away. Barbara Lee didn't realize that.
She's thinking about running for mayor of Oakland. Heaven help us all.
Yes, for sure. Jeez.
If that's the good economic sense they need in Oakland.
Businesses aren't closing fast enough.
Exactly.
Watch this.
we need Barbara Lee to really drive it home, right? Yes. Come on.
Go park at that drive-through window waiting for the French fries for a very long time.
Yes, especially if you're waiting it in and out because it ain't there anymore. But Assembly Bill 2017 prohibits state-chartered banks from fining customers when they try to withdraw money but have insufficient funds in their accounts. Again, this feels like it's a private contract between you and the bank that's holding your money.
Exactly.
Why does the government need to get itself involved in it? I just don't. Susan, can you see any good reason why the government would be adding this in there?
You know, I remember, I think it was Jamie Dimon from Chase who said, if you don't let me charge for the hamburger, I'm going to charge for the milkshake. It was, if you force the banks to do things in a certain way that raises their costs, they're going to charge for more stuff. And there have been a lot of laws that have done that since the crash in 2008. And apparently there are banks that are charging fees for insufficient funds to people who are already broke. And so there's enough people that this is happening to that the representative government is responding to it and calling them junk fees and whatever else. The Democrats have made a big issue out of junk fees and trying to stop companies from charging for different things. But there again, if the costs weren't so high of doing business in California, it wouldn't be so much of an issue that the banks were trying to, recoup and recover all the money that they're spending for all the regulatory compliance costs. I think there's a better way than micromanaging their businesses.
Yes. And the better way is the marketplace, quite frankly. But you are right, Susan. Oh, I got your name right this time. Good.
Without a law.
Without a law.
Without a law, yes.
I would oppose that law. Just want to be on the record. I'm against laws that do things like that.
Well, but I was going to say it's the same thing what you were talking about with hospitals, and the government comes in and they mandate this type of care and that type of care, and then suddenly you're wondering why a glass of orange juice costs $50 or some pain pill costs $100 or whatever. Right. And I mean the costs have to be covered somewhere, and it doesn't just get covered by the I guess false goodwill of legislators.
Right, and when you're dealing with something like Medi-Cal, where they under-reimburse the healthcare providers, those costs are shifted to private insurance and everybody else's costs go up. And just as you said, that's how you get the $25 aspirin.
Yeah. Well, let's see. Now there is, this one was kind of an interesting one. So it says parents who profit from social media posts using their children will be required to set aside some of the earnings for them under SB 764. It says, while AB 1880 expands the Coogan law to include minors who are employed as content creators online platforms such as YouTube. So it does seem like, at least on that parent one, SB 64, I mean, I don't know. I mean, certainly it does seem sympathetic when you hear about some parent who had their kid dancing on YouTube or something, and then they made money, and then there's nothing left for the kid when they grow up. That seems sad. But on the other hand, at some point, I really don't want the government getting into how parents parent that much either. So I just feel like I'd kind of rather the government stay out of this, but I'm certainly sympathetic, I guess, if some parent is.
Well, I think this is a good law, because this is something new that we're seeing, where people have essentially television studios in their house, and they're making their kids into actors, and they're profiting off of that. So do the kids not deserve protection? You can go back and see the story of Shirley Temple or Jackie Coogan, and you can see what happened and why those laws were put in place to protect the kids who were being exploited by their parents. It's not wonderful to have your parents pushing you into show business, even if it's just doing videos in the kitchen. If you want to do that, get a squirrel. And the squirrel doesn't have any rights, and that's fine. But if you're going to do it with your children,
the government may shoot the squirrel, though, like that recent squirrel that the government
Like
shot
Peanut,
in New York.
like we did the Peanut.
Peanut, that was it.
Yeah.
Peanut the squirrel. Sorry about that.
But I mean, if parents aren't responsible about this, and they're giddy off of making all the money on something that's like you could even say that some of these things border into child pornography, and you could get into that OnlyFans business, and that's extremely troubling. But even without that, just look how cute my kids are videos, and you make the kids do that, and you make a lot of money off of it. I think it's an interesting idea to protect the kids' share of that income for when they're older.
I'm having a hard time with this one, Susan, because the government is interfering with the rights of parents here. So I'm having a hard time with coming down on decide that this law is a good law. Even though you're right, there are some very famous cases of parents exploiting their children. What was that short guy who used to appear on Different Strokes? What's his name?
Gary Coleman.
Gary Coleman, yes. He had a situation similar to that with his parents. And I think the case did end up in court, and I don't remember how it was resolved. But even though we have had some bad cases, I don't know. I would prefer that this be settled between the parents and the children in whatever fashion it could be settled.
There's a former child actor, I think it's Paul Peterson from the Donna Reed show, I might be wrong about that, who started an organization called A Minor Consideration to look out for the interests of child actors because they're vulnerable.
Yes.
And I think you can make an argument that vulnerable children should be protected by the government to an extent. I think that's a valid role for government to protect children from being exploited.
And I mean, honestly, in the main, I would tend to agree with that. That I think that should be a role of government to protect the most vulnerable among us. Okay, but I don't know where we draw the line when it comes to the relationship between a parent and child.
Well, in this case, you would draw the line where the money comes in. If people can do whatever they want, but if they're monetizing it, if they're making their kids into influencers and they're signing contracts for advertising and promotion, and they have agents, and there's a bunch of money coming in, I think you can make an argument that that's analogous to kids who were in films or television shows who had their incomes protected from being plundered by their parents.
Yeah. There's a lot of overtones with this as well, with the whole this goes down a whole rabbit hole, I guess, but me and Leon debate all the time too, the parents' role in allowing kids to do some of these things like this this transsexualism stuff that is transgender stuff that's being run rampant in society now. And there is this weird line once you get to the point where, should the government speak for the child, or should the parent, or should it be a combination of the two? And how far should the child's voice be in this? It just is, wow. It's a tough, every time the kids are involved, it's always a tough question. So, yeah. And we've spilled a lot of words over that together. So, yeah, but I'm actually surprised Leon's on this side of the argument.
I know. I was waiting for you to raise that issue. Okay.
Well, I would disagree with the law that said parents couldn't have their children become influencers. If parents want to do that and kids want to do that, I don't think the government should stop them. But in terms of protecting the funding, the money that comes in from it, and making sure that the kids are not exploited for money and then grow up and don't have money for college because mom and dad bought real estate at the beach, I think there's an argument to be made that the income portion of it should be protected. Just
You know,
as with all show business kids, they're protected.
And I think maybe there is a little, exception there to some of those arguments, like what they're saying, because the idea that they're signing a contract means they are for the child, because they're essentially signing the contract with the child, means that they are taking on a fiduciary responsibility for the child. And the idea that somehow that's completely dismissed. I mean, maybe as much as anybody has a fiduciary responsibility to people they're financially advising, I guess maybe the parent has that relationship too, if they're signing a contract with the child to make money in the child's name. I don't know, maybe that's an exception to the rule. I'm thinking. I don't know. Anyways, I'm just spinning my wheels. So.
I'll just say at the end of this, I'm not going to totally disagree with Susan's position, but I still will reserve total judgment as to where I will land on this particular issue.
Well, finally, there's one last thing. We made it to the end of the list. Thank God these guys stopped making laws at some point. It's not infinite. But this one had something to do with Newsom signed legislation giving the state 3 new official state symbols: the banana slug, the Dungeness crab, and the black abalone. These are all the state slug, the state ocean or crustacean, and the state seashell. Who knew we needed a state slug?
Tell me this.
I would say we don't have any shortage of state slugs in Sacramento.
I thought that was called a politician, the state slug.
Seem to have an excess of them, but maybe that's just my opinion. I can't even disagree with that. I can't. Well, just don't say they never did anything for you, because they gave you a state crustacean.
Yeah, that's right. There you go.
They have their priorities straight in California. We can't afford gasoline. They're trying to get rid of electricity. They're trying to get you to sign up for demand control of your electricity. Demand response, they call it, because we don't have enough electricity to go around. And they're trying to mandate an electric car, which won't charge because we don't have enough electricity. But we have a state crustacean.
Yeah, and not enough charging stations either. Which we found out the federal government spent a ridiculous amount of money so far for only 7, but maybe there's more to come. But so we've spent quite a while getting through all this. We did have a Knucklehead Noise Patrol, but I don't know if you guys are totally exhausted or if you want to go through it or not. It's usually something funny, but that was pretty funny what we ended on. So I don't know. Did you guys want to do our Knucklehead Noise Patrol or not?
Up to you.
Yeah, your call.
Okay. Well, you know what? I think this is end of year, and this has been a long trial for President Trump on the campaign trail, almost as long of a trial as it was for us getting through all these laws that we're going to be subjected to in 2025. But at the end of the trail, he managed to become president, and in the end, he actually was recognized for that by Time magazine, which is usually kind of an honor. There's a lot of, significant people who've been given the cover of that magazine, but MSNBC kind of had a different take on it than that. So, Leon, can you play the video KNP1 so we can see what MSNBC's take was on Trump getting Time magazine Man of the Year?
Magazine's Person of the Year. Well, today, Donald Trump celebrated securing that distinction for a second time. And let's remember who else has been given this title in years past in the same category: Adolf Hitler, Joseph Stalin, Ayatollah Khomeini, and Vladimir Putin. In fact, Stalin won the distinction twice, just like Trump.
Well, so apparently, according to Joy Reid, it's only the worst people in history. Does she also include Barack Obama?
I was just going to wonder. I think Barack Obama won it twice also, didn't he?
I'm not sure how many times he won it. Does that make him Hitler?
Yes, it does. They're all Hitler. That's the new rule. Everyone you don't like on the internet is Hitler.
I think Barack Obama bias is coming.
Yes, I think Barack Obama became Person of the Year in 2008 and in 2012, I believe.
Okay.
Pope Francis was also Time Magazine Person of the Year, and so was Ben Bernanke, who used to be the head of the Federal Reserve, and it could go on and on and on. So Joy Reid,
with a whole bunch of Hitlerian figures in there.
I'm telling you, man, those people are some real Hitlers. Really, you got to be careful with them now. I mean, even Saint Barak is a Hitler now. Joy is really showing us the way here. Really.
Well, I think the Time Magazine photographer was red-pilled because he gave President Trump the Lincoln Memorial angle, where the viewer is at the knee looking up at the face. That is the Lincoln Memorial angle right there. I think somebody's a secret Republican at Time Magazine.
Either that or somebody's about to get fired at Time Magazine. Somebody's about to get canceled at Time Magazine. But it is funny, though, because, these people, they try and act like, where is the bias, in the news? They can't imagine there's any bias. And here's an article that MSNBC wrote about this. And, of course, you saw the article that well, at least with Trump, essentially they say Trump is unsurprisingly Time Magazine's Person of the Year again. And then it said the publication's annual designation has little to no importance, even as it picks have courted controversy. This year, it seems more pointless than ever. So, no bias there. But of course, when Barack Obama won it, it was kind of like the President Barack Obama is Time Magazine's iconic Person of the Year.
Tell me it is.
Managing editor Rick Stengel revealed Wednesday as he unveiled the 2012 cover on Today. He's basically the beneficiary and the author of a kind of new America, a new demographic, and a new cultural America that he is now the symbol of, is what they said. Of course, with Trump, it was more pointless than ever.
I'm telling you, man.
If he's not Hitler.
we gotta lift up Saint Barak, and we gotta tear down Hitler Trump. That's what's going on there. Okay.
Well, they tried all year and it didn't work. They tried for several years and it didn't work. So that's the moral of the story is it didn't work.
It didn't work.
Hopefully that's the continuing story for the Democrat Party for years to come.
Yes, I hope so too. Yes.
Didn't work.
It didn't work.
To the point where that's all we say about the Democratic Party is it didn't work. but
if you look at the blue cities, it will never work, right?
Yeah. Well, certainly you'd look over at San Francisco and all of the businesses are going to say, well, something's not working there. But, this does bring up the question as we go into 2025. We've just seen all these, laws, mostly onerous, that are headed our way. What are your guys' hopes for 2025? Is there anything that you guys are really hoping will turn around, or something that you're hoping is going to happen in 2025?
Well, I have high hopes for the Trump administration finally changing things in Washington. They seem to be really sharp, hitting the ground running even before they're in office. I think this is a remarkable thing that we're seeing. It's a historical moment where a former president is reelected on a non-consecutive term, which means someone is coming in with a lot of knowledge and a lot of experience and a lot of cynicism about the bureaucratic structure that holds up policy changes. I think we're going to see some really remarkable growth in this country because of cutting regulation and bureaucracy, which is long overdue. We've had about 100 years of building up this administrative state, and it's too big and it's too powerful, it's too unaccountable, and this really feels like the first time it's threatened, which is a good thing for freedom.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I feel like this great land of ours is like the Titanic out there in the ocean, inching its way towards the iceberg. And what I think is the election of Donald Trump is our first opportunity to steer ourselves away from that iceberg. Because if we do get to that iceberg, that is a point of no return. So my hope for 2025 is Donald Trump will be the captain of the Titanic that steers away from the iceberg.
We tossed the other captain overboard just in time. Good God, man, what are you doing? From overboard. But my main hope is something a little bit. I mean, I guess we're all kind of in the same direction. Mine is a little more closer to what Susan's talking about, but I'm much, I guess, more concerned with the message. What I hope is that this Doge group that I'm not super optimistic with them, but what I am hoping for is that they make the case that there are many things we can do without government. And I hope it's not just something where they try and say, hey, let's just reduce the number of paper towels we use in this agency and maybe they cut down the number of employees in this one and buy a few less tanks. I'm hoping that they can look at entire agencies and make the case to the public that we don't even need this agency in there. Just let the people do it or give it back to the states. And I mean, one of those is, say, the Department of Education. Boy, if they can pull off that, getting the federal government out of education, I think that would be absolutely miraculous and a huge boon towards school choice and getting that movement, putting that on steroids, I guess. And that's what I'm hoping for.
Best chance we've ever seen. We're seeing it right now.
Yes. I think all three of us are saying the very same thing. Okay, honestly, because the government is bloated, like Susan spoke about. It's bloated, and it's threatening our freedoms and our liberties. That's what it's doing. But that is like us in the ocean heading towards that iceberg. And I think Donald Trump is there to shrink government, I hope, and to eventually steer us away from that disaster that is being created because of that bloated deep state that is threatening our freedoms day in, day out, threatening our liberties day in, day out. So I think we're all saying the same thing. Maybe we're saying it a different way. Of course, Susan is far more eloquent than the rest of us, but what
Well, in my opinion, Trump is a political reaction to all the changes that happened after the 9/11 attacks. I think people got angrier and angrier. Everything from standing in line at the airport and being searched in America to the secret surveillance without a warrant that we learned about, the low interest rates forever that rob people of the value of their savings, the inflation. I think people got angrier and angrier. And by the time we got to 2016, they were throw the bums out in both parties. And we saw Bernie Sanders on one side of the spectrum and Donald Trump on the other, defeating all of the people with more establishment views, and in Trump's case, with government experience. And I think he was a reaction to all of that. And then we had this 4-year interregnum with Joe Biden trying to take us to communism virtually, and we're seeing the reaction again. So this is the pendulum swinging, and it's a good thing.
The one thing I'm hoping is that to alleviate this from just being a perpetual pendulum swing, that the message and the ideas get out, because in the end, that's what we need to do to shift it, to make sure that the pendulum never goes back in the other direction. Once people see government in the vein of why is it doing these things, it'll be like seeing the earth is round instead of flat, right? I mean, we don't have to keep making the argument that it's not flat.
I hope you're right. Yes.
Yeah.
Finally win World War II once and for all. Finally defeat communism.
Well, as we're at the end of the show, I just wanted to bring up Susan Shelley's places where you can go find more of her stuff. So she has an X page where you can go find the stuff that she writes about there. And you can also, when we talked about the Southern California News Group, she has a page on Los Angeles Daily News, and you can find most of her articles there as well. So definitely encourage people to go check those things out. Susan, was there anything else you wanted to point anybody to?
I have an author page on the New York Post site, which you can look up. You can find me at the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association at hjta.org. HowardJarvis.org. And I encourage everyone in California to join the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association so your voice is heard in California. It's a great organization.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining us here today. And this has been great. And I think it hopefully helped at least people realize how much there is to know about all of these crazy laws that are coming our way and will continue to come our way if we don't make some changes. So, you know, hopefully people got something out of this. But I tell you, you know, if you're out there and you're watching until the next show, try and think of what you can do in your community, because in the end, you know, this fight for liberty, it's not just about somebody like Trump in office. All of us have to do something. You got to figure out what you can do in your community to advance the ball for liberty. So try and put your thinking cap on before the next show and think about what you can do then. Remember, we literally just had the president of Liberland on the last show. He's starting a whole new country. So I'm sure there's something you can do out there. So thanks so much for joining us. And until the next time, stay tuned and stay free.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you.
Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, always and forever.
Thank you for listening to the Knuckleheads of Liberty podcast. Find us on Facebook, Rumble, YouTube, your favorite podcast network, and at knuckleheadsofliberty.com.